So it is the custom to tear a garment or extension of a garment, which is the ribbon. We wear it sometimes just for the day of the funeral, something that you will show, sometimes for 30 days, which is the tradition. What you choose to do will be up to you. It's not a law, it is a custom. You can do whatever you choose to do. So if you hold on to the ribbon, tear into it, but don't tear it off. Either from the side or from the bottom. Just depends on how the ribbon is cut. That's good. So hold on to the ribbon and say the prayer with me. Ata Adonai Dayan Ha-Emet. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, Judge of truth. Amen.
Be seated for services.
I'll call you both up. Who's speaking first?
Ladies and gentlemen, to begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Esa Enai El Kahari, Me'ayin Yavo Esri, Esri Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz. I will lift up mine eyes unto the mountains. From whence shall my help come? My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. God will not suffer thy foot to be moved. Heaven that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, heaven that keepeth Israel doth neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall keep thee from all evil, and keep thy soul. The Lord shall guard thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and forever. Those were the words of the 121st Psalm. But perhaps the more recognizable words from the book of Psalms is the 23rd Psalm. And And perhaps most of us here have heard the words of the 23rd Psalm because we recite those words at times such as this and have been for nearly 2,500 years. And each time we offer them, it's with the hope that they will somehow bring us a sense of comfort and consolation in the face of our loss. So, Karen, for you, Eric and Amy, for you, Roger and Terry Ann, for you, and Ethan, for you, and Julia, and Emily, and Alexis, for you, and for Jeffrey and Beth, for you too, and for everyone here. I offer these words again in the most familiar translation, and again with the hope that as you hear them, it will bring you some comfort, some sense of God's presence in the face of the loss of your dear husband and father and your wonderful grandfather and your brother and colleague and friend and teacher and mentor, Michael. Perhaps with these words, you'll think to yourself how fortunate you are to have lived your life with him, to have been his partner, to be his children and his grandchildren, his brother and sister-in-law, and to have had such a wonderful role model in your life to emulate, to look up to aspire to, and to have love. Mismo de David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Forever. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Those ancient words helped people way back then understand that maybe the best kind of life and afterlife was with a sense of always being in God's presence forever. I know how difficult today is for all of you. And I know what it's like to lose a beloved father and a wonderful grandfather. And Karen, how fortunate are you to have spent half a century plus with such a wonderful partner, and how fortunate he to have had you to care for him, to be with him, to live life with him. I have a 7-year-old granddaughter, And several months ago, we were playing on the floor and giggling and having a wonderful time. And then, out of nowhere, she looked at me and said, "Oh, Grandpa, I wish you could live forever." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. And I spend my life finding the words to say. But in that moment, I didn't know what to say to my granddaughter. So I simply said, "Oh, no one lives forever. But the best we can do is enjoy every moment we have together." You enjoyed every moment you had together with your partner in life, with your father, with your grandfather. It was so evident. I spent a few moments looking at the photograph, the larger photograph in the hallway of the four of you next to him, reading the book for his 70th birthday. For a moment, before I saw the book on the table, I wondered, well, what book was he reading to you? And then I looked closely and I saw the title on the book, and then I looked on the table and saw the book itself and all the photographs. Those images and all the images in your memory is what will bring you comfort and I hope sustain you as you share your memories for the rest of your lives. But for today, my words are not the important words. The words of memory, tribute, and honor. The most important words are the words you speak. It's the stories you share. It's the tribute that you offer to him. And not just for today. Today begins the rest of your lives in that narrative. But to begin for us today, Eric will call upon you, and Roger then will call upon you.
Good morning. My name is Eric Weisenberg, and I'm the younger son of Michael's two sons. And I first want to thank those in attendance today and those watching online, which include many family and friends. I know that some of you traveled a good ways to honor and remember my dad, and speaking on behalf of my mom, my family, my brother's family, and my dad's brother's family, we really do appreciate that. I also want to in particular thank the staff from Arden Court's Memory Care, some of whom are in attendance or possibly watching on the live stream today. It's not a great feeling to see your dad in a memory care facility, and in particular, to have to say goodbye at the end of each visit. But I was always thankful for the love and care the staff demonstrated for my dad. It was clear to see right through his passing last Friday. And along those lines, I also wanted to thank my mom, who outside of the COVID lockdown spent part of nearly every day with my dad in his 3+ years as a memory care resident. I'm going to start by reflecting on a memory from my senior year of college that has always stuck with me over time. My parents had come down to visit, and they spent time over the weekend around my friends and roommates. At the end of the visit, I remember one of my friends turning to me and asking, "I can't picture your dad not smiling. Is there anything you can do that would make him stop?" And I responded, sure, two things, scratch up his car or mess with his computer. It was a quick exchange, but for whatever reason, my friend's comments stuck with me over the years, because I realized at that moment how fortunate I was to have something that I'd become so accustomed to, always being there. My dad's positive and always happy presence. Another set of memories that I think helped to explain who my dad was are those of him on the dance floor at formal events. Now, personally speaking, I struggle when it comes to the dance floor. I don't have any go-to moves, I can't hear the beat, and worst of all, I think everyone's watching me. It's a terrible combination and one that takes about 8 gin and tonics to work. Now, if you've ever had the opportunity to attend a formal function with my dad, it's clear that I did not inherit his dancing genes. It's not to say those genes would win a dancing contest, but at least I'd be dancing. My dad did have a go-to move. It was rolling the dice. And I think my dad heard the beat, but like I said, I didn't, so I can't really judge that. But what I know for sure is he had no care in the world who was watching him. He would just be out there doing his thing, smiling ear to ear, enjoying his time amongst family and friends. And this image of my dad speaks in large part to who he was, an individual who wasn't at all concerned with fitting in with the crowd, but rather was going to do his thing that made him happy, and ultimately live his life to enjoy it. So I thought it would be good if I could take some time to lay out and reflect on some of the passions my dad pursued that brought him the most joy. So we'll start with computers. So thanks to my dad, I'm pretty sure we were one of the first households to have a computer back in the day. My dad bought his first Commodore VIC-20 in the early 80s, then moved on to the Commodore 128 and about 15 different PCs until we finally convinced him to switch over to Apple in his later years. I remember he was building databases at work before databases were a thing. He set us up with a dial-up online service called Quantum Link before either AOL or the internet was what it is today. And he made regular trips to the computer store to the point where he and the salesman at the Princeton Forestville Village software store, a guy named Doug, were on a first-name basis. He was big on computer games too, to the point that my friend Matt would come over, not to hang out with me, but to trade computer games with my dad. All right, cars. My dad loved cars and had this long-standing belief that when the odometer flipped from $49,999 to $50,000, that the car would lose tremendous value at that very moment. So he was constantly shopping for new cars, and I loved going through the process with him. Reading through the same car magazines, trading off ideas on what he would buy next, and visiting the dealers when it came time. And my dad was not going to be duped at the dealer. While most salesmen do whatever they can to prevent you from leaving, my dad was the guy that got told to leave at Lawrenceville Toyota after getting a bit too aggressive on his expectations for the account. I believe the manager told him to go do some more research. Food. My dad loved food of nearly any kind. He had his favorites, probably Chinese if he had to pick one, but he just loved a nice big lunch or dinner. While he would gladly go to a fancy restaurant and eat an expensive steak, he was equally fine with a couple of giant stuffed crust slices of pizza from Sbarro at the local food court. And while my dad was a dedicated and successful and hardworking HR professional over the course of a 40-plus year career, on a number of occasions when I tagged along and went to work with him as a kid, I always got the sense that picking his lunch spot was the highlight of his workday. Cameras. So my dad, and I know many of you have actually said this up here today, but my dad loved his cameras, and people never saw him without one. And I wanted to make a distinction on this one, though, because he wasn't so much into photography as he was specifically into the cameras. He would always buy the latest model with all the cutting-edge features as soon as it came out, but he did not necessarily exhibit the same critical evaluation of his pictures as he did for the camera itself. Since he had the best camera, he was often called upon to take the important family portrait when everyone was dressed up and together. And if I could only have convinced him to just keep the settings on auto, he may have gotten fewer cameras over the years. And building on this one, the grandkids over time learned that Grandpa loved taking their pictures so much that he would even take on a few eating challenges, if it meant he could get some more picture-taking time with them. So they concocted awful snacks for him, like chocolate chip cookies covered with ketchup. And he was always a great sport, and would take on the challenge and eat those awful snacks while making crazy noises like he was grossed out as he was chomping them down. The kids would love this, and they would then hold up their end of the deal by exhibiting about 2 minutes extra of picture-taking patience. 2 more of these. Travel. My dad loved traveling. Some of my favorite childhood memories are from the family vacations we took when I was younger. I think my dad enjoyed the planning process almost as much as the trip itself. I can remember his first step was convincing my mom it was time for a trip. Then he would order the AAA travel guides, then order the printed hotel brochures to get sent via mail. And of course, he picked up the AAA trip tip for the long drives. And as the internet came into play, my dad evolved with the times and shifted his pre-trip research to online. My parents would go on cruises, and my dad would join chat rooms where he would engage fellow passengers taking the same itinerary. And I think I remember he would even go online and follow the cruise ship along its itinerary the week ahead of his trip, as if he didn't know where it was going. All right, presents. Now, everybody likes presents, but my dad must have been the most fun and easy person to buy a gift for. First of all, anything that was electronic was considered a viable gift. And if he still couldn't think of anything, he always had a list or a registry ready to go. But whether he stuck to the list or gave him something unexpected, he would always have just the happiest and most appreciative reaction. At Hanukkah, it became a custom in our family to have my parents open their Hanukkah gift last, when we had time to get the video camera rolling and the whole family watching, waiting to observe his reaction. And in most cases, he would open the gift and show all this excitement for what he had opened, and then turn to my mom and ask, "What is it?" So now I can go on to these interests, on which include bike rides, reading, teaching, movies, TV shows. He might have been the only viewer that didn't stop watching Survivor by season 15. And he wasn't embarrassed to tell you that he loved to watch The Bachelor and Bachelorette. But the one I wanted to be sure I hit before finishing was family. My dad deeply loved his family. My mom and him enjoyed a loving marriage for over 50 years, and my brother and I couldn't have asked for better parents and a better home and family environment to grow up within. My father was always there for us at each stage of our lives, from playing games as kids, rooting us on from the sidelines during sporting events, helping with schoolwork, going on college tours, which I'm pretty sure he enjoyed more than we did, helping us think through our post-college career plans, and even attending our bachelor parties. And as my brother and I each met our future wife, or wives, my father couldn't have, turkey. It says each met our future wife, so I don't know what's the right tense there. Anyways, my father couldn't have been any more welcoming to his future daughters-in-law, my wife Amy and my brother's wife Carrie Ann. In my case, I remember bringing Amy to a local Cherry Hill restaurant called La Posada to introduce her to my parents. As we entered the restaurant, both my mom and dad looked really excited to meet Amy, but I could see my dad had that super excited look on his face that I knew meant he had about 20 to 25 questions queued up in his head, and that he was likely to start firing them off and probably listen to about 30% of each of Amy's answers before strategizing how he would approach his immediate follow-on question. And as I wrote that, I realized where my ADD came from. But moving on, Amy and I were together for some time, and I also recall planning a night out for our parents to get to know one another better. And while eventually they did get to talking that night, things got delayed at the start as my dad somehow locked himself in the bathroom shortly after arriving, and my future father-in-law had to get out some tools to break him free. In hindsight, though, it worked as a great icebreaker as our parents hit it off, and Amy and I will always be blessed with the memories of multiple vacations with both my parents and hers together with our family. So as we moved on with our lives, Amy and I had two daughters, Julia, who's now 15, and Alexis, who's 12. And Roger and Carrie Ann had a son, Ethan, who's now 17, and a daughter, Emily, who's 14. And I must say that having the opportunity to observe my dad with each of his grandkids will always be one of the joys of my life. My dad loved his grandkids so much, and was so hands-on in playing with them, from going to the park, playing games, introducing them to new apps on the iPad, playing kickball, and even engaging in water balloon fights. And I can assure you that he had his camera strapped around his neck for nearly all the time he was doing those activities. At each family outing, he was the first one to start playing with the grandkids and the last one to stop. And while my dad has passed on now, I'll always be thankful for the time he did have with the four of them and the memories of him they can take forward, which thanks to him are all well documented in photos. So to bring this to a close, I just want to say, Dad, you were such a positive influence in my life. You were kind to all those that you encountered, and you brought so much happiness and laughter to our lives. And ultimately, you set a great example for me of what it means to be a great dad. I hope Julia and Alexis think of me as I think of you. May you rest in peace. I love you, Dad.
Hello, I'm Roger, Michael's older son, or as for those who say that my brother and I look alike, I'm the one with glasses. First, I want to say thank you all for coming today and remembering my dad. We really appreciate all of your support today. I wanted to echo my brother's comments and also thank the staff at our boards. As you're probably aware, my dad was battling Alzheimer's for the last several years and spent the last 3.5 at our person Cherry Hill. Taking care of patients with Alzheimer's presents a number of challenges. Having to do that during a global pandemic only complicates that further, and the staff there provided my dad exceptional care and made a very difficult time as smooth as possible for both my dad and my family. So like many of us over the last 18 months, I was working from home throughout the global pandemic. This summer I first ventured back into the office, and there was one picture on my desk I was especially excited to see. It was a Father's Day gift from Terry Ann, Ethan, and Emily that they gave me 3 years ago. My first observation was how those kids have grown over that time, and then I quickly noticed the text below the picture. It said, "Father, one who loves, supports, guides, inspires, and encourages children." Now, having 2 teenagers, I often find myself questioning how effectively I really can inspire them. But as I look at that text now, I can't help but feel that to whatever extent I'm able to successfully demonstrate those qualities, it's because my dad demonstrated them throughout my whole life. So going back to my early childhood, my dad was always there. Eric and I liked sports a lot growing up. My dad wasn't much of a sports fan. That didn't stop him from getting out in the backyard with us every week, kicking a soccer ball around and throwing a baseball. He took me to my first Phillies game at the vet and my first Devils game at the Meadowlands. As Eric described, he enjoyed to travel and was always planning his next family vacation. He liked an adventure, and those vacations were some of my best memories. My dad was there for every big milestone: buying my first car, college visits, parents' weekends at UVA. He was always there. One milestone I'll never forget is the summer after I graduated college. I was starting my first job in DC, and the 2 of us went down to go apartment shopping. Naturally, I was nervous realizing I would be moving out on my own for the first time in my life, and my dad was there to guide me every step of the way. I remember sitting down with him for lunch in a restaurant in Old Town Alexandria, right after signing the lease for my first apartment. And with my dad just right beside me, I felt a huge load off my back. My dad was always there to support me and cheer me on, and I always felt Eric and I made him proud. In the times I did not succeed, my dad was there to encourage me and help me understand how I could do better next time. So as Terry and joined our family, the 2 of them were dangerous together when they went out shopping. It typically meant they were spending money that they shouldn't have. I would cringe when they would return from an unexpected purchase, and my dad would look at me and say, "Roger, stop being cheap." My dad provided the same guidance and support for Terry Ann. She also had the good fortune of buying her first car with my dad. When we moved up from Virginia and I was starting a new job in Philly early on, he traveled down to help her pack up the house with Ethan, who was only 18 months at the time. As Eric mentioned, I think my dad's favorite job was being a grandfather. Every event, he always had his camera around his neck and worked to capture every moment. We had a family get-together. We used to joke that there were 5 kids: Ethan, Emily, Julia, Lexi, and Pop. One of my favorite photos is from Emily's 6th birthday party. We had planned a water balloon toss in the backyard. Unfortunately, this was one time my dad did not have his camera around his neck. Because let's just say the water balloon toss turned into a water balloon fight as the kids decided to ambush Pop. Now, Pop definitely was able to land some good shots, but I think the grandkids won in the end. He loved spending time with all the grandkids. We would always enjoy when he would participate in family game night. A typical family favorite was having my dad take on the star performer category in Cranium, where he would show off his acting skills. Ethan and my dad were inseparable when Ethan was little. They would build Lego set after Lego set, and they shared his early love for technology. And when Emily was little and wanted a partner to play Pretty Pretty Princess, my dad was the first to jump up, and she could always count on him to binge watch Disney Channel with her. Now, while my dad had so many great qualities, flexibility, probably not one of them. He liked his routines, and the examples are endless. He loved to read and shop for electronics. So every weekend he would go out for what he would call his rounds. Now this typically would include at a minimum trips to Best Buy, Barnes & Nobles, and Staples. He would look at the same products on the same shelves week after week and always had a backlog of items on his wish list as he planned his next purchase. And after he bought any new electronic device, computer, printer, phone, camera, anything, he would read the full instruction manual cover to cover that night. And the next day he would have some reason to call tech support. Sometimes he would call tech support when everything was working just perfectly. He would just call to ask questions he already knew the answer to. I never really understood why he did that. Now, he liked to travel. So if the airline told you you needed to arrive at the airport for your flight an hour and a half early, my dad would double it. Got to get to the airport early, Roger. On the plane, he would always reserve a window seat. If you liked a TV show, he would encourage you to watch it. If you didn't watch it right away, he would remind you over and over and over again. Believe me, even if you didn't like the show, you would watch it anyway because you'd be tired of him pestering. And while most people procrastinate in filing their taxes each year, for some reason he felt he needed to be the IRS's first customer to file his taxes every year. And after he filed, I would get a weekly reminder from him throughout every week in February and March asking me if I filed my taxes yet. My dad was unique. Now in our house, whenever I do something at home that Emily thinks is odd, which is probably every day, Emily looks at me and says, "You do you." Well, my dad certainly did him. We appreciate that. It made him happy and it made us all smile. So while flexibility wasn't necessarily one of my dad's strengths, he more than made up for it with his dedication, persistence, and commitment to everything he did. Whether it was his work or his personal life, if he said he was going to do something, he did it thoroughly and he did it well. Dedication, fulfilling your commitment, and putting 100% effort every time, all qualities I learned early on in my life from my dad. If I needed help editing a paper in high school, he would not hesitate to stay up with me as late as I needed just to make sure it was perfect. And more recent, his perseverance was especially evident as he battled the Alzheimer's up through his final days. So aside from missing all the laughs and happy memories with my dad, one of the hardest parts of his passing is not having the person who I would go to all the time for guidance. He was the one I consulted for advice for every big decision in life. Where to apply for college, making an offer for a house. And the little decisions too, such as choosing the best Chinese restaurant to order, or which electronics were the best sale this weekend. If there was something you needed to discuss, he'd say, "Let's go for a walk." My dad was always the first person I called and asked for input on any question, and I was very fortunate to have my dad to get me to where I am today. In closing, I'd like to reference a song from Keith Urban, a song called "Song for Dad." I think the lyrics of the song reflect my thoughts today. The last line of the song summarizes it up well. The older I get, I hope every day I see a little more of my father in me. Dad, we love you, we miss you, and thanks again for your support.
Eric, Roger, you both spoke so wonderfully, so beautifully, so heartfelt. You made us laugh, you made us cry, and you made us realize what a terrific man your father has been and will always be for all of you. Not much left for the rabbi to say. I'd like to share this thought with you. I too like photography. Though I don't necessarily need the latest piece of equipment, and I tend to use my cameras for years and years and years. This is what I learned about photography. The photographer really doesn't capture the image. The point of photography for anybody who's really into photography, is to capture the light. It's all about the light. And your father and grandfather, your beloved Michael, he captured the light because you were the light of his life. You are the light of his life. And he so desperately wanted to capture it. That's why he always had his camera around his neck. And all those images, they just reaffirmed for him how beautiful the world can really be. You didn't speak about how he captured mountaintops or waves in the ocean. Maybe he did, of course, especially on the cruises, lots to photograph. But you spoke about how he photographed you, and out in the hallway, all the photographs about you. In fact, I think in the book, there's a little note that even though he took all these photographs of you, you managed to get a few photographs of him so that you could share those images as you do and as you will. He needed to capture you, and you taught him how beautiful the world can be. And he taught you to capture every image. Every opportunity you had, you caught his image. And you're lucky. You don't even know how lucky you are. I live with people who never even knew their parents, let alone grandparents. You knew him, and he knew you. And so, if his professional career was in the field of human resources, the greatest gift he gave was to you as your human resource in a father and grandfather and brother and husband. You now cherish that resource in memory. The resource that makes you a better father and mother. The resource that will make you a better husband, Ethan. Better wives, better parents, better grandparents. Because it seems to me you have the best to learn from. So all the gadgets, all the electronics, all the games aside, you had the genuine article, the real thing. I'd like to end with this poem by Georgia Harkness. It's titled, To My Father. A giant pine, magnificent and bold, stood staunch against the sky, and all around shed beauty, grace, and power. Within its fold, birds safely reared their young. The velvet ground beneath was gentle, and the cooling shade gave cheer to passers-by. Its towering arms a landmark stood, erect and unafraid, as if to say, fear naught from life's alarms. It fell one day. Where it had dauntless stood was loneliness and void, but men who passed paid tribute, said, to know this life was good. It left its mark on me. Its work stands fast, and so it lives. Such life no bounds can hold. This giant pine, magnificent and bold. Michael was a great man. He didn't build buildings, didn't have to. Didn't amass billions of dollars, didn't have to. He did create, Karen along with you, the greatest thing of all, the love of his family, the respect, the devotion, the dedication of his family, because he gave himself to you. May his soul rest in peace, his memory assured, and his legacy in each and every one of you who knew him, loved him, learned from him, and now will carry on his life. Amen. We rise for the El Mole Rachel. El Mole Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Lenishmat Yitzchak Ben Shmuel Udvora Shehalach Le'olamo Baal Harachamim Yitzrur Bitzrur HaChaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomor, Amen. God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of your beloved Michael, our beloved Michael, the son of Sidney and Dorothy, for he has departed from this world. Lord of mercy, bring him into thy presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou his possession, and may his repose be peace, peace eternal, the peace reserved for the truly good and righteous and beloved amongst us. And may we say, Amen. Committal services will continue at Locust Wood Cemetery, and our service here is concluded. Please be seated.
I'll ask if we can rise once more, please.